Are the Russian armed forces preparing to invade Ukraine? Why has Russia deployed armed forces to the borders of Ukraine? Why is Russia against Ukraine joining NATO? Will Ukraine be able to defend itself from Russia? How involved will Ukraine allies be in this war? What measures can be put in place to contain Russia? In this video, I am going to be answering these questions, explaining the situation around Russia invading Ukraine and measures that could be put in place to incapacitate Russia's plan. Russia is likely to invade Ukraine in the weeks or even days to come. The number of forces Russia has mustered on the Ukrainian border would allow for a simultaneous invasion on three fronts. Invasions in the east from Russia, in the north from Belarus, and in the south from Crimea. Europe threatens sanctions and promises Moscow global ridicule, but may soon have to face the toughest retribution of providing substantial support for the rising revolt against Ukraine. The outcome of an insurgency is highly dependent on the external support given. In the 80s, the successful outcome of the insurgency that happened in Afghanistan was contributed to by the support they received from the military force of the neighboring state. Assistance can come in the form of a refuge, financial aid, supplies, intelligence support, and training that can sustain an insurgency even under intense pressure from a commanding power. Russia has been hell-bent on the fact that it doesn't have any plan to invade Ukraine, but in March 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine and seized Crimea, despite having the same claims as now. Russian troops estimated to be over 100,000 have set garrison close to the Ukrainian borders, and another 30,000 in Belarus undergoing training exercises and has been scheduled to end on the 20th of February. Citizens of Western countries have been called upon to vacate Ukraine as soon as possible, since the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or Atlantic Alliance, NATO, has reported that Russia still has troops ready to invade Ukraine from Crimea to Belarus and has shown no signs of demobilization. The United States President Joe Biden spoke with Russia's President Vladimir Putin and threatened that if Moscow escalated its invasion of Ukraine, the United States, with its allies, will take fast action and enforce severe consequences on Russia. President Putin insisted that Russia does not want to go to war with Ukraine. Instead, is ready to negotiate a treaty. He also threatened to carry out befitting military technical retaliation if the Western allies carry on with their aggressive approach. Why then is Russia threatening to invade Ukraine, since Putin claimed Russia is ready to negotiate? Ukraine borders Russia and the European Union, but since it was previously a Soviet republic, it shares deep ties with Russia, and the Russian language is generally spoken there. Following the overflow of their pro-Russian Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, by the Ukrainians in 2014, after preparations for the implementation of the association agreement with the European Union were halted, Russia extended into the southern Crimea peninsula of Ukraine and supported separatists who conquered large parts of eastern Ukraine. Over 14,000 people have gotten killed in the war between Ukraine and the separatists. A 12-point ceasefire agreement was reached by Ukraine and the separatists in September 2014. However, this deal fell through quickly, since both sides violated the agreements. The 2015 Minsk peace agreement is also far from being fulfilled, because Ukraine sees this agreement as a tool to regain control over the separatist invaded lands, and also demands control over their shared borders with Russia and the election in Donbass, limitation of power wielded to separatists. Instead, Russia, through the Minsk peace agreements, wants Ukraine to give full sovereignty and representation in the central government to the rebel authorities in the Donbass, which in turn gives Moscow the power to contradict Kiev's foreign policy decisions. To date, there has been no agreement to grant Donbass full sovereignty, and Russia denies its involvement in the ever-persisting conflict. In 2021, President Putin referred to Ukraine and Russia as one people, and that the fragmentation of historical Russia happened after the collapse of the Soviet bloc building in 1991. Russia sees Ukraine's present administration heading an anti-Russian scheme and has stated that it is imperative to secure that Ukraine never becomes a member of NATO. Russia has long opposed Ukraine's transition to NATO and the European Union, and their main demand now is for the West to assure them that Ukraine will not join NATO. Why are they so worried about Ukraine becoming a member of NATO? Since NATO is an alliance of 30 countries, they believe the alliance will help Ukraine recapture the southern Crimean Peninsula if they ever join them. They also fear that Ukraine joining NATO will place a limit on Russia's access to the Black Sea, and the alliance will complete a western wall of potentially antagonistic powers. Ukraine is looking for an exact opportunity to tie the country to a future within the European Union and NATO. In a meeting with NATO, Moscow demanded a guarantee that NATO military alliance stop recruiting new members and withdraw their military forces from its eastern allies. This means NATO's security unit will be demobilized from Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania, and other eastern countries, and ensure no more eastward expansion, since in 1990, before the collapse of the Soviet bloc building, the West broke their promise of not expanding into the east. NATO's 30 member states have made it clear that they will keep upholding their open door policy to allow each country the liberty of choosing their security arrangement. Russia will certainly respond to any action carried out by the West against its new plans to invade Ukraine, and this response will be solely based on whatever action is carried out by the West. This action has to be well thought out by the West, since Moscow has a significant weapon, their oil and gas shipment. Since they are one of the top 3 producers of oil and gas globally, they have used this weapon to impact the behavior of other countries in the past. But Russia is also a major exporter of other vital resources and has threatened to slow down or stop the transfer of natural resources to Europe. The prices of oil and gas will surely skyrocket, and the effects of the oil and gas sales disturbance will affect other markets and impact the economy negatively. The FBI has also been on a cyber attack watch because Russia is fully engaged in an aggressive cyber campaign against Ukraine and USA. Russia denied being involved in the taking down of 70 Ukrainian government and administration websites, and Ukraine faced its largest cyber attack on 2 of its biggest banks. They have been on the lookout for Russian hacking activity to target businesses, Ukrainian leadership and control, communications, and other critical frameworks, since there have been reports of cyber attacks and intelligence operations. If and when the Western world reacts to Russia's aggression, Moscow will act in turn. But with the help of capabilities the US intelligence service is supposed to be familiar with. Russia has also denied the Pentagon's accusations of its preparation of a false flag operation, with agents ready to release graphic videos of a false attack to provide them with an excuse to invade Ukraine. The West has avoided getting involved in the cyberspace war. What will the war look like? Russia has an edge on the number of armed forces they have compared to that of Ukraine. They have over 600,000 active forces more than that of Ukraine. It is a ratio of 4 to 1. Although Russia has an added advantage of converging with their agents that have been previously delegated to the separatist war in eastern Ukraine and expanding the area under their management. Samir said the real advantage for Russia is that it already has agents fighting in the separatist war in eastern Ukraine, which allows it to link up with them and expand the territory already under their control. Russia will be able to attack the borders either from Russia, Belarus, or Crimea. Is Ukraine prepared for invasion at any time? Although Ukraine lost the war effortlessly against Russia over the Crimean Peninsula, its military is stronger than what it used to be in 2014. They can always bank on supplies from their allies, like advanced anti-tank supplies from Washington and intelligence assistance from the United States. But will that be enough, since Russia has more advantage in battle tanks? The ratio is 3-to-1. With this kind of advantage, Ukraine probably should prepare to resist the Russians and separatists as much as they can, pray and hope aid comes from the West, put in place counterinsurgency plans that will make the invasion relatively harder for Russia. What else can be done to avert Moscow's invasion plans? After the seizure of the southern Crimean Peninsula, the West imposed sanctions on Russia, and since the United States and its allies have threatened to take swift and severe actions against Russia should they proceed on the invasion of Ukraine, they can consider adding more painful measures or imposing more severe restrictions. Presently, Russia has experienced a lag in the economic growth since the Russian financial and oil and gas sectors are under bans from the United States that have restricted the access of several government-owned companies to the capital market. These sanctions have not incapacitated the company's day-to-day operation, but have slowed down the normal progress of these companies. Of course, these sanctions will have ripple effects on the economy of the United States and that of its allies, but this will require a tolerance for these effects, because these sanctions are designed to mainly mitigate the threat of Russia invading Ukraine or expanding its territory outside Crimea. They can impose more severe restrictions such as freezing all Russian assets and prohibiting transaction sanctions, preventing the pumping of Russian gas to Germany via the newly built Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and many others. Since in this kind of war, Russia needs all the possible revenues available, sanctions against Russian government-owned banks and financial institutions like Sberbank, VTB and Gazprom Bank will be a suitable comeback that will have a massive impact on Russia to any aggressive action carried out by Moscow. These sanctions should be well thought of, and their effects should be considered. If these banks and institutions cannot be targeted directly because of their impact on the economy of the United States or European countries, then their smaller subsidiaries should be targeted. The United States and the European Union can also target the Gazprom energy company. A full ban will not be beneficial since Europe is dependent on Gazprom's gas supply. Restrictions on their capital market, minor restrictions to inhibit the finances of Rosneft energy company, and full blocking sanctions against its smaller subsidiaries will have a significant effect on the company. Oligarchs like Surgutnaftogaz, Novatek, Alrosa, Sovcomflot, and many others can also be targeted. Putin will have to stake all of its relations with the West if he progresses with the Ukraine invasion. How far NATO will come to the aid of Ukraine cannot yet be ascertained, since Ukraine is not yet a member of NATO. And that brings us to the end of this video. Let us know in the comments section what you think about the Russian invasion and its effects on Ukraine. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell to get notified when we post a new video. Alright, see you in the next video.